Hello, my name is Galena. I'm the fiancé of Joshua Lee McCollister, who was murdered on July 8th by Deunn Willis and robbed by Danielle Durand. I think a lot about an incident that happened pretty soon after Josh died. Someone told me that I should get down on my knees, very literally on my knees, and beg Josh's mother for forgiveness because I'd gotten her son killed. I needed to beg both his parents to forgive me for getting their son killed. And I understood why they had come to that conclusion. And I was really grateful that I didn't think that that was necessary. It's not that I would have had any problem doing it. It's just Josh talked to his parents a lot. His mom particularly, he talked to her pretty much every day. So I knew his parents knew an awful lot about the stalking situation. And like a lot of details about it. I will always hold myself accountable for his death to a very large degree, because if it wasn't for him being in love with me, he'd still be alive. But that said, I wasn't the one hurting him. These people were the ones hurting him. And when I talk to his mom, you know, we tend to like swap information. There's things about the stalking that she didn't know until I told her. And there's things about the stalking that I didn't know until she told me, because Josh was trying to protect both of us. You know, there are certain details he knew would be too upsetting for his mom, and certain details that he knew would be too upsetting for me, and so we compare notes. And you know, there's a question that Sandy has that I have too. Why the hell was Josh brought to Fort Bragg in the first place? Because I know why he came. I know exactly why he came. You know, he heard that I was in danger. He didn't know about the serial killer thing. He just heard I was in danger, and he just packed up his gear. He didn't even have a suitcase. He just left everything in Southern California behind because this girl that he loved 14 years ago, he didn't think he had a chance with, he wasn't going to let anything bad happen to me. He just packed up his gear, walked 20 miles to a bus stop. He came running because that's the type of person he was. If anybody he cared about was in danger, he was there. I get why he came. I do not know, and I'm sure I never will know, why they brought him, though. Like, I was the hook, I was the lure, I was the decoy. What were their real intentions? You know, that's something his mom would like to know. I'd like to know, Josh wanted to know, because he never figured it out. He knew there was some kind of darker purpose, something that this person was hoping he was going to do. He just didn't know what. Josh loved the instigator. Heck, I had too. It was very difficult when we became friends for us to really just lay our cards out on the table about how uncomfortable we were with this whole thing. I was especially uncomfortable when Josh came up there because I took one look at him. I was in love. Oh my God, I was. But I didn't want to be. This was not okay. This was very forbidden. And I was very uncomfortable also because the instigator told me 14 years ago that if I was single, that the man I should marry was Josh McCollister. He said that that was going to be my second husband. We were going to be perfect for each other. And coming from him, that was just really just bizarre. Like, I'd had the opportunity to meet Josh face to face 14 years ago, and I'd said, hell no, this is weird. This is creepy. No, I don't want to meet this guy. I did not know that the instigator had been telling Josh that same thing 14 years ago. You know, if she's single, you don't date her, you're going to wind up marrying her. You know, you're going to wind up being father to her kids. This was like, this was an awkward situation that this instigator had created, just so strange. And I've talked about that with Josh's mom so much. This is a strange position to put a woman in, a strange position to put a man in. Why throw me and Josh together like this? I mean, just to see what happens, essentially? Josh wanted to know more about the situation with my father, so we went for a walk on the A&W logging road. This is about 3 months after he got to Fort Bragg. We went out there. I have bad balance. Like, I can't climb worth a darn. Josh wanted to sit underneath the A&W logging road bridge, and I was really scared to climb down that tiny little embankment. And it's actually the first time I ever held Josh's hands, because he was really a persuasive person, at least with me, and he convinced me to climb down underneath the bridge. And I was scared, but when my hand was in his that first time, I just knew that this person would never let me fall. I was safe with him, so safe. We got down under the bridge, and the conversation about my father gradually became a conversation about the instigator. And Josh just told me straight up, quote, "I'm not his fucking torpedo." See, Josh was incredibly strong. He was not a big man, so people wouldn't have realized. That man was so strong. I've never seen any man in my life as strong as Josh was. And because he was so strong, and because he was so modest about his intelligence, a lot of people seem to think that he was all brawn and no brain, but he was very smart. And he would let people think that he was no brain if that's what they wanted to think. He was fine with them thinking he was stupid. Go ahead, underestimate me. That was kind of his attitude. He believed that he had been brought up to do something bad in Fort Bragg. He didn't know what it was. His instigator seemed to be dancing. But he thought that there was something illegal, some purpose that he was supposed to do. And see, the instigator had a history of finding guys that were a little bit younger than him, guys that were not neurotypical, who would take on that protege attitude with him. And Josh was just not going for this. And I told him in the past that the instigator had actually ruined people's lives, guys' lives, with this behavior. And I said, if he comes to you and asks you to do something illegal, don't do it. Like, if you have any doubts about any situation he's getting you into, please come to me first. Do not do it, because you're going to wind up in jail. If you follow whatever instructions he has for you, you'll wind up in jail. He'll be the one who created the situation. your life will be ruined and he'll be able to skip town. Do not do it. Please don't tell him that I told you this, but don't do it. Josh heard me. I didn't have to say that more than once. And whatever the instigator was up to, Josh never fell for it. The only bait that he ever took was when the instigator said, she's in trouble. He came running. But Josh was unnerved the entire time, up till the day he died. He wanted to know what the heck, why was he in Mendocino County in the first place? You know, when I had to get back up out from underneath that bridge, I couldn't do it. Josh had to help me get up because I just couldn't climb it. And like, he put an arm around my waist and he kind of just hoisted me up. And when our feet were both back on cement, he said to me, that I weighed the same as a bag of groceries. He was surprised that I only weighed the same as a bag of groceries, and I'd been told by the instigator the entire time he was there, Josh is in love with you, and I just didn't believe it at all. I mean, Josh was very upfront about what kind of woman he was attracted to. It was not me. I mean, he liked girls that were very big and tall, and I am neither of those things. So I just was very sure he was never going to look twice at me. That was, I think, the first time, though, that I thought maybe he had feelings for me, because it wasn't the words he said, it was the way that his tone dropped just a little. Whenever he'd talk about his wife, his tone would always get a little bit soft. Just a little hint of affection there, and his tone dropped in the same way when he said those words to me. But I dismissed it. I kept thinking that Josh was going to leave Fort Bragg. I was terrified of it because I knew the instigator was on his best behavior towards me only because Josh was around. And I knew when Josh left, it was going to be bad for me. His cruelty was going to shoot right up the day that Josh left. I just didn't understand why for Josh, though, why he was staying, because he talked about his parents all the time, wanting to go back to Southern California. He especially wanted to hug his mom. Talked about how much he missed her so much, wanted to see her again. And for his sake, I wanted him to go. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. I knew something bad might if he stayed. But he just wasn't leaving, and I just couldn't understand that, because the whole reason the instigator said he was there was because they were friends. They were such good friends, and I knew it was crap, because when Josh was around him, he was tense. He was, like, visibly tense. And I suspected that I knew what the reason was, but I didn't have confirmation for a long time. Josh was a survivor of SA. He had some of the worst, most horrific things happen to him of anyone I ever met in that regard. And a very difficult thing to be vulnerable, to share those nitty-gritty details. And he was not the type that was inclined to do it, but he had shared some very specific details with the instigator about SA like 14 years ago. And one of the things that I first start to really hate about their relationship is that the instigator would come to me and first off tell me these details, which they weren't my right to know. If Josh wanted to talk about it with me, I was good to listen. He had no right to tell me what had happened to Josh, though. That was not okay. And the way he would do it was like, oh, well, he's lying. I know he's lying because I did XYZ to trigger him about being raped, and he didn't like trigger in the way that I thought. Essentially, the way that if it was true, Josh would have acted this way. Josh didn't act this way. And all I could think when this instigator was kind of like ha-haing about this is, who the hell are you to say how he's supposed to react regarding rape triggers? This didn't happen to you. You weren't there for that occasion. What the fuck is wrong with you that you think you get to dictate how he's supposed to react about being sexually assaulted? Now, this was just something that the instigator would do. Like, I call it kicking in the rape. And, you know, this is something that, like, I trusted him with details, very tough details about being raped. And he wound up using so much of that to his advantage later on, to trigger me, to hurt me. And he did the same thing with Josh. And I think that when I think of how their friendship was lost, that's always what I think of, that the instigator specifically did things to trigger Josh regarding being raped, regarding being beaten. And when Josh didn't react the way that he was supposed to, that the instigator not only told other people these details, but I know Josh was really humiliated by some of these things, and he talked to me about it, that, you know, there were certain details that he managed to block out over the years, things that he remembered 14 years ago that he'd managed to not remember anymore. Really painful things that he frankly didn't want to think about anymore, and that the instigator would bring these details up to him, and it would make him psychologically shut down. And that he was hurt and angry that this person he trusted these details with just had to be like poking him in that way to see what would happen. It's just petty sadism, no, nothing else. And if he'd left when the instigator did this stuff to him, yeah, he'd still be alive. But just like the instigator liked to poke him in the trauma, the instigator knew that he could get away with that crap because Josh was not going to leave me. And even if I was a complete idiot as to whether or not Josh might love me or want to be with me, the instigator was not an idiot. He was very perceptive. He told me after Josh died that he knew from the moment we saw each other that this was a foregone conclusion. So he could pull all sorts of petty, mean, cruel things on Josh that he wanted because he knew Josh would not leave me. I remember one time the instigator had these strange ropes. I think it was strange ropes and hooks. And he told me that these were Josh's and that they were to be used for one particular thing. And Josh asked me about them, and I said, well, those are yours. He told me. He said, those aren't mine. Those are not mine. And Josh looked at this stuff and he said the instigator's name. He said, instigator, what the fuck are you up to? He just looked at this stuff and he was trying to figure it out and he couldn't figure it out. He never figured it out, and neither did I. But that's a question that Sandy and Neil would like to know. Why was he up there in the first place? I'd like to know it. Josh wanted to know it, and we'll never know it, because the only person who knows is the instigator, and he's not going to cough it up. It was a bad thing, whatever it was, and Josh was a good person, and he didn't go for it. I think even if I hadn't told him he will get you in jail one way or another, even without that, I think Josh would have figured it out. And I don't think he would have gone for it, whatever it was.